Hello YouTube, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be going over how to build a custom Intex Mariner 4 raft into a more stable fishing boat. As you can see in the photo, I've got a wood frame on mine with a couple of seats, rod holders, ice chest, motor, etc. In this little photo slider video, I'll be going over how I did it and what I'm going to do different on my next one, which I'm about to start very soon. So sit back, grab a beer, whatever. This is going to be kind of a long video, but I want to go into it in detail so you guys get as much information, and hopefully it will help you, in building something that you can use to go fishing in. So first off, I'd like to discuss the floor. The floor is the most important part of this build. If you don't do the floor right, you can cause a lot of problems down the line. But the ideal floor will be stable, sturdy, and what have you. Just so you've got a tight boat. So it really, so you can stand up in it. There's a lot of stability in it. If you're in some rougher water, it will provide additional stability. The stock floor, it's okay, but you're not going to stand up in it. It's just not something that I would recommend. If you're a serious fisherman, I would definitely step it up a notch. And get a wood floor in there. I used a nice finished piece of plywood, and you want to go with the finished piece of plywood so you can avoid any splinters and any stuff like that. Any knots and things like that. But it's really important that you cut the floor to size properly. When I started cutting the floor, I used the floor that comes with the boat in the kit as a template, and I used a Sharpie to outline it onto the plywood. I tried to be pretty mindful, of all the little curves and straight lines, to keep it as straight as possible. And then at the time that I built this boat, I only had a jigsaw, a handheld jigsaw, to cut the floor. And basically once you get that floor cut out, you're going to kind of see the shape that you see there in the video. And when I did it, I basically just tried to keep it as straight as possible. And once I got done with that, I took a palm sander and I rounded off all those edges on the sides and corners. Everything should be round, where the wood meets the raft, because you don't want any sharp edges rubbing on the seams of the boat. That's really important. Also, you'll notice where behind the benches, behind those bench seats, there's a little bit of an angle on those back lips and the front lip. How I did that, it took a minute to figure out how I was going to do that, because I wanted to keep the integrity of the plywood, but at the same time I also wanted it to be kind of go with the flow of the boat, because otherwise that end would rub on the raft. It would put a lot of stress on the floor underneath, the actual raft floor. So what I did was I took a crosscut saw with a straight edge that I clamped down, and basically I sawed about halfway through the top and close to halfway through the bottom, just so there's a little bit of plywood still connected. And then I cracked it on that line and I epoxied it in place. And it's not super critical that joint be real strong, but it's an extra area where you can store your batteries if you're going to run batteries. And that's how I did that. But yeah, I basically just put like a 2-inch piece of scrap wood underneath each end while it was drying at night, so it dried into that angle. The next step was building the bench seats. To build those bench seats, there's an easy way to do it, and I will include dimensions at some point in the description in this video, so you guys don't have to go through all the aggravation. But it's not really that hard. You just basically take your floor, once you have it all sized up, and fit it into the raft, and then blow the raft up so it's at full capacity. And you can get a better idea then on where those bench seats should rest on the raft. But ultimately, if you blow up the inner tubes all the way, then you can figure out where that line is and you can make the bench seats the proper height. It's nice to build them like that because then you have storage underneath for your tackle box or whatever you're bringing along with you while you're out fishing. But I just used, I think, number 2 white pine or whatever for those bench seats. And I also sanded them down real smooth. Everything that, anything that's connected in this boat is, I believe I used Titebond glue when I built everything, which is a really strong woodworker glue, and then I screwed everything together with hex head galvanized screws. I think they're deck screws actually. But either way, if you build those bench seats nice and strong, that will also add to the overall structural integrity of your frame. And those inner tubes, they'll fit perfectly between the floor and underneath the bench seats, and it creates a nice lock so that it's super strong. And that was an important part of it all. There's a line in the raft where the floor of the raft itself will curve up, and that's why I built the benches as far back as possible on each end to give it, for leg room. Because it's a small boat. It's right under 11 feet long, but you can see that's an 8-foot sheet of plywood from front to back. So, you got to use your space accordingly and whatnot. But that's basically, an important part of it, getting all those parts to be the right size so everything hugs itself when you're, when the raft is blown up all the way, and it creates a real tight, structure and bond, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it fit perfect. This is my first frame that I built. I'm about to start my second frame here in the next few weeks. I'm actually waiting on a new skin to show up. But you can also see in the center there, I bought a little ice chest. I forget, I think it's like a 20-inch wide ice chest. But that little frame in the middle of the floor there, it snugly fits the bottom of the ice chest. And we'll get into that a little bit more in some of the pictures coming up. As you can see there, I also put a little battery box and with a little wood cradle around there, for the battery to sit in, because that's the back of the boat where the trolling motor will be mounted. In taking a look at that picture there, the sides there where, it starts to curve right at the end of the bench seat, right by the battery. It's really important that you don't have a sharp edge down there, because that can cut into the actual seam where the floor of the raft meets the inner tubes. So it's really important that you smooth that out, and it's not smoothed out in that photo, but basically I hammered on it with a palm sander until it was completely like a free-flowing round corner, so nothing will gouge into the sides of those seams in the raft. It's very important that the width of the floor is proper. You don't want it to be too tight. And you'll see in some of the upcoming photos, you can use several things, but you don't want to just put the frame in without putting some protective, edge cover on around the floor there. You really want to use something like, I've tried everything, but the most effective thing so far was pipe insulation. You just, it already has a cut in it, so you can slide it around a pipe if you live in an area where there's cold weather. But, mess around with it. It's kind of tough to keep it on though, so you got to figure out what kind of glue you're going to use. I eventually settled on epoxy. Epoxy usually works great for just about everything because it's also pretty waterproof. But you'll see in some upcoming photos though that I used pipe insulation on the floor. But it's just important that you take your time and, make sure everything is a good fit, and a good finish, very smooth. I went over everything, I think, with 150 grit sandpaper once I got all the sizes cut and everything installed, just kind of going over the whole boat. You don't want any splinters because remember, it's a rubber raft, you don't want to be out in the lake and find out you got a leak, because that's, that sucks. Then you got to go in and, patch it up, and you're cutting into your fishing time. Right there you can see what the ice chest cradle looks like after it was finished. I didn't really have any set design in mind, any plans or anything like that I was going off of, but I just kind of went with the flow as I was building it. That's kind of half the fun of doing stuff like this. I got some side supports on there, and I wanted to make it light, but I also wanted to make it kind of strong. And you can see there, right under the actual top of the ice chest, there's another wood band that goes around it that kind of keeps it secure. And I built that frame around the ice chest once I found the center mark on there. And those side wings, um, those are where you mount your rod holders. You'll see in some upcoming photos. But it was just kind of all about stability when I did that. And the ice chest is it's nice. You can throw some drinks in there. It's just big enough to throw a couple of fish in too. So that's how I did that. Right here you'll see a photo of the actual boat after I had it all stained. There is no polyurethane on it at this point, but kind of test fitting the pipe insulation around the edge of the floor, and just kind of test fitting everything. I had to notch out some spots on the back of the bench seats, the back part of it, so the GCI sit backer seats could strap onto it, and that really helped make the seats more stable and easy to take them off if you want to take them off or whatever. And just kind of looking at this picture though, you can see everything kind of coming together. And surprisingly, it's pretty lightweight. I mean, it's still a big giant pile of wood, so it's not super light, but it's the ultimate goal was to make it really strong and functional more than anything. So like I said, this is my first attempt at the floor and frame. This worked out really well for about 5 years, about 4 years actually. I used this frame, and then finally the weather got the best of it. And I'm going to be uploading some new video in the near future. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to be building a new frame. It's going to be based on this design, but it's going to be a few modifications, and I have some ideas that are going to make this a little better. But this one worked great. I have no complaints about this one at all. It pretty easy to actually get it inside the raft too. It does help if you have another person to help you do it, but if you really are ambitious, you can do it yourself. And but yeah, we'll get into some other issues with this frame and more on the build and some of the photos coming up. Right here you can actually see the frame inside the boat, and it's a pretty nice fit and finish. I mean, it worked out really well. The build was a little tedious because I did it from scratch. I had no plans to go off of. I kind of started with the floor though, and that, like I said, reiterate, that's really important that you get the floor to fit properly with not putting too much pressure on those seams where the actual raft floor meets the inner tubes. But once I got it all finished, and took my time, it fit in perfect. I had to do a little more sanding on some of the side, on the actual floor, just to shave a little off here and a little off there so it fit in there. And you can tell if it's in too tight, and you might need to take off a little bit more. And like I said, at some point I will put the dimensions of the finished floor in the video description. I have a new Mariner 4 skin on the way, the actual raft on the way. It looks like the new Mariner 4 has some different graphics on it, and I'm hoping that the actual interiors, sizes are exactly the same, so I can kind of model the next frame off of this frame. This frame does not look like this anymore. After just a lot of years of fishing and rain and crazy weather. I live in Montana, so we get a lot of crazy weather, but we definitely recommend using a different method on finishing it and sealing it. I'm going to go with the West Systems two-part epoxy. It's a marine epoxy, to really protect all the wood in the finish. And you can put UV resistant shellac, and there's all kinds of different stuff you can do to finish the wood a little better than what I did with this first frame. I built this frame in 2012. At late 2012, and I used it up until last fishing season. So, but other than that, I don't really have any complaints about it. And it's lightweight and strong and portable. My next frame, I'm actually going to build a motor mount that attaches to the frame instead of the raft. You can see on the back end there's a Minn Kota Endura 30 mounted to the optional motor mount that you can buy. You know, you can get them on eBay. But this, you can get an Intex 4 or an Intex Mariner 4 on eBay for like 220 bucks, the actual raft skin. I think it's like 30 for the motor mount. But I'm going to actually put a small 2.5 to 3 horsepower kicker motor on there. You know, so I don't have to charge batteries. I would charge up 2 batteries and take them out with me when we went up to the lake, but it's just never enough juice. You know, sometimes you want to go out for 3 days or 2 full days, and you know, then you got to figure out how to charge them up at your campsite, you know, or take them to your local bar and near the lake and charge them up while you're eating lunch or whatever. But yeah, I'm pretty much over the electric motor stuff, and yeah, I'm going to move on, and my next frame is going to be set up for the little gas kicker. Here's just another photo of the frame. You know, you can see the pipe insulation around the edges of the floor. You know, the rod holders are mounted. You can see where the rod holders are mounted. I had to do a little recessed cutout on the ends of those to fit on top of the raft where the oar locks are. And you know, you can figure it out. You know, you just got to kind of do a little fiddling around and some measuring here and there. But you know, the overall fit and finish of this raft, you know, the raft frame worked out great. If you're looking for an affordable boat to get into, the Mariner 4 is a great raft. It's not like those little cheap Sevular rafts or whatever, you know, where they're really thin skinned. It's actually a really durable raft. I wish I would have actually taken video footage when I built this first one for you guys, but just wasn't thinking about doing a YouTube video at the time, so you'll have to bear with me and go by these photos of the build, because that's all I have for this first one. So I put as many in as I possibly could, you know, just so you guys can eyeball it up and see, you know. Towards the back there, I put in a couple of little things there so you can attach an anchor, because sometimes I like to do some still fishing too. I use this boat primarily for trolling, but it's a great little boat if you want to do some still fishing. So I put some little rope cleats on there, you know, so you can attach an anchor to it and tie it off when you find your right spot with the depth. You know, I got 2 anchors. I put one up in front and one up in back, and they kind of slide in right next to the battery boxes. There's actually enough room in there, or you could put them up under one of the seats. But usually my buddy has his beer underneath there, so there's no room for an anchor there. But they work good next to the batteries, you know. And I actually at one point had a battery up front and a battery in the back, and they were both wired into a battery selector switch, so I wouldn't have to monkey around with it. When one battery ran out, I could just flip the switch, which is under the under the back seat. You don't see it in this photo because I added it at a later date. You won't see it in this photo video because I didn't put it in until 2013. That worked out good, but it was just a lot of unnecessary stuff to have in there, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to go to a gas motor, so I don't have to deal with battery stuff anymore. I just want to fish, go. When we run out of gas, I can just carry a little 2.5-gallon gas can with me and put it behind one of the seats, and you know, just fill up the motor, you know, as needed. But whatever, you know, and it's a good little boat all around though, and I'm hoping that this video will help you guys make one if you decide that's what you want to do. In this next photo, you can see a little more of a close-up of the rod holder. I went with the Canon rod holders. They're real nice finish, real durable. You know, they have a adjustable tilt on them, so you can set your angles properly. I kind of wish I would have figured out a way to mount those a little further out, because the butt ends of the trolling rod sometimes get in the way of the actual ice chest opening and closing, but it's not that big of a deal. You can live with it, but it is one of the things I want to remedy on the next frame. But you know, you can see that everything, you know, fits good. It's right where you need it. Everything's handy, and I wish there were some pictures of us sitting in it so you could see how much space there is to move around and whatnot. You know, you can stand up. There's plenty of plenty of room to move around if you need to. In this photo you can see what the battery box looks like a little more close up. If you do decide to go with a little Minn Kota electric trolling motor option on this boat, you're definitely going to want to get a battery box. You know, it just makes it a little easier as far as hooking up your trolling motor to the battery because of those external wing nuts. And a lot of these battery boxes have a little battery meter on them, so you can see how much juice you still have in your battery. On some of the new Minn Kotas too, they have battery meters on them, so that's always nice, you know. Here's a picture of the ice chest opened up. You can see the rods are kind of, you know, in the way. You can't really open that thing without moving your pole out of the way. And hopefully that doesn't drive you guys too crazy if you decide to go off of this design. It's not that big a deal, but when you're out there on the water, you don't really want to have to move your rods out of the way every single time you want to open your ice chest. But that's not really that big a deal. You know, like I said, it's just part of the design. Those oar locks kind of get in the way, so I had to do it that way. In this next photo, you can just see a cup holder that I mounted to a little shelf inside underneath one of the seats. It's nice to be able to put your beer somewhere, you know, especially if the waves are kind of if it's choppy out. It's nice to have a place to put your cup, or put a can, so it doesn't tip over. And I've also got my my scissors, or my little what are those, forceps. I just drilled a hole right in the side of the bench, and they snugly fit in there. Everything, it's kind of nice to have everything snug and in place, so it's not, you know, stuff falling all over the place, and, you know, you just whatever. But I put a little lip on the bottom of the bench there so the tackle box doesn't slide around, it stays in place, and that's pretty handy, so you're not wasting a lot of time, you know, looking for stuff. When you keep it in a storage spot and it stays there, that's and you know where it's at all the time. That's why I built stuff that way. There's a picture of the actual tackle box sitting in there, so you can see what that's like. There's plenty of room in those little storage spots, and, you know, you could probably put in a little shelf in there or whatever you want to do, but it worked out pretty good. I don't have any complaints. Overall, like I said, the fit and finish of this thing worked out really well for my first go around with it, and, you know, hopefully you guys can find some good tips and pointers when you're building a frame for your Mariner 4. Yeah, that's about it. You can see the GCI sit backer seats have straps that go underneath the bench, so they strap to that top bench and then go through the two holes right around the back side of the bench seat, lock into place, and they got adjustable things to, you know, make sure they're nice and snug. There's just another little picture of the forceps, another picture of the seat, and you can see the seat there. It's got those clamps, or those latches or whatnot, so it works out pretty good. Little light under the seat. There's another picture behind the back of the bench, and there's another picture of the actual motor, so you can see how it mounted to it. It's, you know, it's a pretty good design they came up with for the Mariner motor mount. You know, it's pretty stable. There is a little bit of flex, you know, with the sun and the wind and air and all that. The pressure inside the raft can change. Sometimes you'll lose a little air when it gets colder and get a little more when it gets hotter, but that will affect the rigidity of that motor mount. And that motor mount isn't bad. Like I said, I can't complain. I think the new ones are made out of some sort of heavy duty poly plastic, but on my new one I'm going to build a motor mount that is hooked directly to the frame, which is good for a couple of reasons. You get the rigidity while you're actually out on the boat. You know, you got a good solid mount hooked directly to the frame, so there'll definitely be a little more stability with the motor. Those gas kicker motors, I think those weigh about 32 to 35 pounds, you know, the 2 to 2.5 horse ones. The Minn Kota, I think that weighs about 30 pounds, you know, and then you kind of get rid of the battery weight if you go to the kicker motor. But if you do decide to go with a motor, that Endura 30 pushed it really well. You get a lot of power. Right now I have a Endura 50 on there. That really goes well, and doesn't drain your batteries too fast. You know, if you're going out for the day, 2 batteries is usually plenty, unless you're, you know, trolling at super high speeds. But I most of the time just putting along, and that worked out well. So like I said, I'll definitely keep you guys updated on the new raft and how things work out with that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or send a message to me directly. I'll be happy to help you out if you decide you want to take on this build. It's not expensive. Probably the most expensive thing outside of the raft itself is getting a good piece of finished plywood. I would definitely, lean towards 1/2 inch. I think I actually used 3/4 inch for the floor on this, and I mean it was super sturdy. It's still, pretty damn sturdy. So even after all the weathering and stuff, but I would definitely use a minimum of the 1/2 inch thick finished plywood. Well, all right, that wraps up the video on my first Mariner 4 custom frame build. I hope this video helped you guys, or will help you guys if you're planning on building a frame for one of these boats. If you have any questions, please leave one in the comments, or go ahead and just instant message me, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And I will try to get those dimensions up of the height of the seats and the actual width of the floor, and any other little tips and stuff that I forgot to put in this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so if you wouldn't mind. And you can expect some new video footage coming up here in the next few weeks on my second frame build. And I will be doing an unboxing on the Mariner 4 raft itself, and we'll go over lots of stuff. Looking forward to sharing that info with you guys. And that's all for now. Happy fishing.